Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to everyone who is watching us tonight on YouTube and Facebook. My name is Bob Abbey. I'm an adult services librarian for the city of Forest Grove, and really happy that you could join us tonight for our program, The State of Affordable Housing in Western Washington County. I'm very pleased to have with us Steve Mann, who is the Relationship Director for West Tuality Habitat for Humanity. And he's going to be talking about affordable housing in our part of Washington County. And then he's also going to be providing some, I think, really fascinating information about the history of Habitat for Humanity, and also talking about the important role they play locally in helping to connect folks to affordable housing. So I'll bring Steve on in just a second. But before I do, I want to again thank you all for joining us on whatever platform you're watching this on tonight, whether it's on YouTube or on Facebook. As always, these are interactive, and I encourage you throughout the evening to ask questions, make comments. If you're on Facebook, you can do that in the comment section below the live stream. If you're watching us on YouTube, you have to have a YouTube account to do that. That's one of the things about YouTube. But if you do have a YouTube account, please feel free to put your questions right in the comment box below the screen. I will see those during Steve's presentation, and then I'll come back when he's done, and we'll chat a little bit, and that'll be an opportunity for us to go through your questions and anything else that you might have brought up, comments and so forth. Before I bring Steve in, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm in Hillsborough, but Steve is in Forest Grove, and we will be talking about a part of Western Washington County that is located on the colonized lands of the Tuality Kalapuyans, who are also known as the Tualatin Band of Kalapuyans, and they were the first inhabitants of Washington County. And today, their descendants are members of the Grand Ronde and Siletz tribes, and they uphold the traditions and cultures of their ancestors. And I hope you'll join me in acknowledging and expressing gratitude for the ancestors of this place, and recognizing that we are here today because of the sacrifices that were forced upon them. As part of honoring their legacy, their lives, and their continuation in our communities, I encourage you to spend time and learn more about the rich history of Indigenous peoples locally, regionally, and nationally. So with that, I'm going to bring Steve into the stream. Hi, Steve. Good evening.
Hey, Bob. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are not familiar, we are partnering this summer with West Tuality Habitat for Humanity as part of our adult summer reading program. This program is called Read for a Cause, and for every hour that adults in our community read, our Friends Group is providing a financial donation to West Tuality Habitat for Humanity, a matching dollar amount. So money that's going from the community into the community. And we're really excited about launching this program with West Tuality because of the great work they do. And Steve is going to talk to you more about that this evening. But first, he's going to talk about the state of affordable housing in Washington County, especially in the western part of the county. So Steve, I'm going to bring your slides up onto the screen, and I will back out, and I'll come in when you're done, and we can chat a little bit more.
All right, fantastic. Well, again, just excited to be here. This is a topic that has become much nearer and dearer to my heart. Been working with West Tuality Habitat for Humanity for the last just 6 or 7 months. And so I don't consider myself an expert. I've been doing, a little research to just prepare for this and ask some other people's opinions. So this, certainly won't be an in-depth discussion, but and really many of the things that we're experiencing in Western Washington County are things that are being experienced by our neighbors across the state and across the nation, of course. But whenever possible, we can try to get as local as possible with some of our discussion. So as Bob said, two parts to the discussion tonight. Part one is that state of housing. What do things look like? And then the second part will be what's the work of Habitat for Humanity, and how does that connect to those housing needs? So we'll just jump in here. I've got my notes. He's got my notes. The slides are coming up. So hopefully we'll keep the discussion going. And again, looking forward to answering as many questions. And Bob can just interrupt me at any moment, because he has all the power here, right? Okay. So as we start this discussion on affordable housing, it's a huge topic, right? We need to kind of limit ourselves for the sake of time and for the sake of my own expertise in this, because the discussion on affordable housing can easily get tangled up in a lot of other equally huge topics. It connects to discussions on wages, minimum wage, living wage, wage gap, CEO wage gap. We could talk all night on that, but not with me. The discussion on housing connects, of course, to the economy in general. Goes into housing stock, pricing, opinions on urban growth boundaries. If you're an Oregonian here, local zoning laws. That's of course way too much for us. So okay, what can we talk about tonight? So we're gonna, since I'm in charge of this part, right? We're gonna limit our discussion entirely to home ownership rather than rentals. And that's primarily the work that Habitat does. And so that's why I'm doing that. And also we want to limit our discussion to home ownership of entry-level homes that are affordable. And so right off the bat, we'll need to define some terms, right? And so let's do that. First, okay, what's considered an entry-level home? Entry-level is not defined by price primarily. For a lot of people that might come into it, of course, but primarily an entry-level home is defined by size, by the square feet. So housing and urban development consider a entry-level home to be 1,400 square feet in size or less, which is interesting because just a few years ago, the median single-family home in the U.S. was 2,300 square feet. So, and I think I'm going to skip one of those definitions there. We'll just keep moving along here. So that's what, when I talk about an entry-level home, that's what we're talking about. And those, of course, an entry-level home, because of the limited size, is going to have a lower price tag typically, right? But price, again, is going to vary depending upon where you're living, what kind of neighborhood you're living in. All right. So second definition we'll make here is what do we mean by affordable home ownership? What's affordable? Because what's affordable by one person might not be affordable by another. So how do we define that? There are terms that are helpful that have already been given to us, right? Housing and urban development, a definition of affordability is if the housing costs, which includes taxes and insurance, does not exceed 30% of the gross household income. So if housing costs are over 30%, this household is considered cost burdened. And again, if maybe you've heard terms like this in regards to renters as like rent burdened. Same idea, same percentages. So also if housing costs are over 50% of household income, this is considered severely cost burdened. And particularly for renters, this kind of household is considered vulnerable to homelessness. So we've got, I think slide 3 has some numbers. Over half of Oregon households that rent spend over the 30% marker. So they would be considered cost burdened. Nearly 1 in 3, 30% of Oregon households with a mortgage are over that 30% line. And then 1 in 6 Oregon households overall, renters and owners, spend over that 50% marker. So severely cost burden. This is another interesting thing I found. You know, what goes into housing costs, and what do people spend on monthly maintenance costs for the U.S. homes. I thought this was just an interesting thing to throw up here. These are definitely not all the things I had in mind when I bought my first house, and maybe a lot of people don't, but that's just a little extra there for you. All right, but let's move on here. Let's talk about entry-level homes. Let's talk about that for a while. The percentage of entry-level homes that are being built is at a 50-year low, right? I mean, that's just an amazing number right off the top. These kind of homes are just not being built. In 2019, only 12% of homes in Oregon were considered entry-level, under that 1,400 square foot mark. I did a little search just yesterday on the home site Zillow, looking for available homes in Western Washington County under 1,400 square feet. So I found 30 in our basic the 5 cities that make up kind of the bulk of Western Washington County. So I found 30, but 20 of those were over $400,000. So I mean, you can see right there, just finding these kinds of homes are extremely difficult. And also, I discovered that in general, there are 40% less homes of all types for sale now than pre-pandemic. So we're definitely in just a high pressure time for people that are looking for homes, looking for affordable entry-level homes. So people would ask that question, of course, why is housing availability so low, especially for entry-level homes? I've got a quote from the chief economist at Freddie Mac, and he says that the main driver of the housing shortage is the decline in construction of entry-level single-family homes, which I think we've just seen that, right? We see that graph. So as we go on, and again, put something in that chat box if you've got a question for me, or for Bob. I mean, Bob could just jump in here anytime too. So there are fewer entry-level homes are for sale because obviously there are fewer entry-level homes being built. So why is that? The most common answer that I've found for why builders are not building entry-level homes is because they're not very profitable for builders to build. If you've got the same size lot and you can put one affordable home in it and earn a few $1,000s, or make a home that's 2 or 3 times that size and earn 5 or 10 times the profit, then as a builder, that's not a hard decision to make. So even with government incentives, but again, the government isn't a home builder. They can try to incentivize affordable home building, but they aren't going to be the ones that build it. Companies do, people that are also trying to pay the bills, right? And also, I discovered this, the kind of requirements that, maybe like a certain percentage of units in a subdivision be built as affordable, that's actually illegal to do in Oregon. That's called inclusionary zoning. We don't do it here. So there are other ways that the government has to incentivize that kind of thing. So that's one reason. And now also another reason that was really brand new information to me is that fewer entry-level homes are for sale because there are a lot of investors and investment groups that are buying them up and turning them into rentals. This happened quite a bit nationally in the latest housing crisis. A lot of people who got into homes couldn't keep their homes. They were foreclosed on, and a high percentage of those were not just sold to new buyers, but they were bought up and turned into rentals. Um, let's see, according to Pew Charitable Trusts, a nonpartisan and non-ideological research organization in Philadelphia, investors there bought 24% of single-family homes in 2021. And since 2012, that number has been between 15 and 16%. So making 2021 the fastest year-over-year increase in 16 years, that those homes are being bought not by families looking to live in them, but by investors and investment groups. And of course, this also applies to things as simply as taking a home and making it into a short-term rental, an Airbnb, VRBO. Those can be very lucrative for people, but then that's not a family buying that home and living in it. So let's see, where was I? So again, and also if you're an investor and you've got a lot of financial backing, you can make an offer that maybe a lower income family just can't match. So here's a Forbes article from April of 22. It says this about the recent skyrocketing price of housing. One national long-term systemic cause is that real estate investors get huge tax breaks that live-in owners don't get. This was information for me. So landlords naturally buy a lot more houses because of those tax breaks. So that was a Forbes article in April 1st of 22. So again, once you start doing a little more research, you find little bits of information, and when they all add up, you've got this avalanche of reasons. Here's also an interesting slide. The Washington Post notes that investment groups are at increasing rates buying up homes in majority Black neighborhoods. 30% bought by investors in 2021. Over non-majority Black neighborhoods, only 12% bought by investors. So, and again, you might think, well, does that apply to Western Washington County? It may or may not. However, we are part of the larger metro area, Portland metro area, and sometimes being out here in Forest Grove, we'd like to think what we're maybe not influenced by things of Portland, but and as far as the housing market, we're not far away. So those things do matter to us. Let's talk about home prices. Okay, so we're in this period of big increase in home values these last 2 decades. Oregon home values are considered 8th highest in the nation, while Oregon average income is ranked 18th in the nation, so quite a few steps down. The median sale price of a single-family home in Oregon, according to the realtor group Redfin, is $526,000. The average U.S. single-family home currently is $436,000. So the average is like 90,000 higher in Oregon. What would be causing these high price, this rise in home values? We'll give you 4 reasons. Okay. Reason 1, high prices in Oregon. 1, Oregon was the 9th fastest growing state in the U.S. between 2010 and 2020, according to census numbers. So growing population, growing demand for housing, higher demand, higher prices. Reason 2, land costs are also rising. So being a part of the Portland metro area, we have urban growth boundaries that we have to deal with, and yes, they may reduce urban sprawl, but they also tend to drive prices up by limiting the supply of available buildable land, whether that's for whether that's commercial use or residential use or any kind of use. So that's another reason. Third reason, according to a CBS News article from May of this year, 2023, many experts had predicted that home prices which surged during the pandemic, would drop sharply this year. But the lack of homes for sale, exacerbated by owners that have locked into low mortgage rates who are sitting on the sidelines, pushing up prices. So I did hear somebody say that the majority of homeowners right now have a mortgage with, an interest rate like in the sixes or lower, and so they're tending to hold on to those. That makes sense. I would do the same. Right. Last reason, inflation. And I think maybe that's self-explanatory for most people. And for inflation increasing means that anybody who's lending money for mortgages knows that they're not going to really get back the true value unless they charge a higher rate. So those are those 4 reasons about home prices. So let's summarize. A lot of words. My mouth's getting dry. Time for a drink. So we did some definitions. We defined an entry-level home considered less than 1,400 square feet. We defined affordable housing, cost-burdened housing, severely cost-burdened housing based on percentage of household income that's going towards those housing costs, and how high those levels are for so many people. We talked about low stock, low availability of entry-level homes and some reasons why. And then we talked about recent and continuing high housing cost trends and some of those reasons why. So that's our summary of part 1. How we doing? You ready to maybe hear some good news? Hopefully I can give you some good news, because we're going to transition to part 2, which is the work of West Tuality Habitat for Humanity. So what I've been doing when I talk to people about Habitat is, my first question is basically, well, what do you know about Habitat? A lot of people are familiar with Habitat, but maybe don't have a real accurate view of what we do or what we don't do. There's some, misconceptions. So misconception number 1 is, oh yeah, Jimmy Carter, President Carter started Habitat for Humanity. He's a great supporter, but no, he didn't start it. He had been a volunteer worker on some Habitat sites, but I think it was particularly around 1984 that he was speaking someplace, passed by a Habitat work site, just stopped to say hi, because that's what presidents do, right? They just stop in and say hi. Found out that they needed volunteers and got a crew together, and that really started his participation at a higher level. So since then, the Carters have personally worked alongside volunteers in 14 different countries to repair, renovate, and build over 4,300 homes. And so he's been doing that for 38 years or more of volunteer work and partnership. So we really appreciate that plug from President Carter, but no, he didn't start it. Also, another big misconception is that Habitat builds homes and then just gives them away. I wish that was true. I wish we could do that. But no, we don't do that. Our partner families are selected among dozens that apply to the housing program. So they're selected for their ability to partner not only with literally the building process of their homes. Each family puts in at least 250 hours of sweat equity. So they're out there swinging hammers and painting and drywalling, and then doing all that stuff as well. But they're also selected for their ability to take on an affordable mortgage for that home. And as we talked about, we know what that definition is for an affordable mortgage, right? It's 30, yes, at or below 30% of household income. So Habitat makes sure that mortgage fits that family's needs and ability to pay. So we'll talk a little bit more about the partner process and how that works. Super quick, brief history of Habitat's beginnings. Habitat, the roots of Habitat are traced back to 1950s rural Georgia, and a racially integrated community farm called Koinonia, started by a man named Clarence Jordan and some people. Uh, excuse me, and some other people that were a part of that developed this concept of partnership housing. So that concept centered on having those in need of adequate shelter working side by side with volunteers to build decent, affordable houses at no profit. And the returning payments were then put into a fund for humanity, they called it, to be used for the next homes. So it was like 1976 that the Fullers, this couple, called together a group of supporters to discuss the future of their dream, which was Habitat for Humanity International. So started in 1976 that way. So Habitat's mission and vision. I love these pictures right here. So much fun. Their mission, their vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. As simple as that. A world where everyone has a decent place to live. That's a huge vision, because that's not just a U.S. vision. That's a worldwide vision. And so, Habitat International, of course, is working in all 50 states, but also active in over 70 countries around the world. So that's their vision. Everyone has a decent place to live. Their mission statement goes like this: seeking to put God's love into action, Habitat for Humanity brings people together to build homes, communities, and hope. As simple as that. So, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to get behind the work of a group that does that? So that's certainly been my experience working with them just these last 6-7 months. So how did Habitat get working here? The West Tuality Habitat for Humanity, the one that's right here, the Restore in Forest Grove. When did that start? So it was 1990 when a group of community conscious Forest Grove residents began considering starting a local chapter of Habitat for Humanity to serve Western Washington County. I haven't talked this long straight for quite a while. Excuse me. All right. So after a considerable amount of work, when in organizing, forming, and formalizing the local chapter, the groundbreaking for the first home that West Tuality Habitat built celebrated in June of '93. And since that date, 21 families, I'm looking at the number on the board, over 304 home repairs have been done in that time. And over the number of decades, the amount of work that they've been able to accomplish have just doubled in time. So, even since 2020, again, the rate at which the homes are being built doubled again. So we're excited about what we've been able to do. Let's see. And in fact, lately, speaking of groundbreakings, just a few months ago, celebrated another groundbreaking for a mini subdivision of 8 new homes on 23rd Avenue, close to Tom McCall Upper Elementary School. So that's been fun. That was an exciting day. Some people don't have a good understanding, and I didn't either, of what it is. Okay, we talked about West Tuality Habitat for Humanity serving Western Washington County. So what does that mean? We call it an affiliate, a local chapter, so to speak. So you can see up here, each Habitat for Humanity affiliate or local chapter has a service boundaries that they work with. So ours are on the map coming up here. We serve the communities of Forest Grove, Cornelius, Gaston, Cherry Grove, Gales Creek, Banks, Manning, Timber, and North Plains. So what about Hillsboro? Who serves Hillsboro? Hillsboro has need. There's another Restore in Beaverton. What's that a part of? So that's part of the larger Portland region. And so each affiliate is independent and has some of their own programs. I remember, before I worked here, Did some shopping at the Forest Grove Restore, did some shopping at the Beaverton Restore, and then realized that some of the programs weren't the same. Didn't understand that at first, but of course I do now. But so we're the local guys. We serve the local community, and we like being able to be that focused on just the local community. We love it. All right. So what is our work? What do we do in the community? So number one, yeah, we're building affordable homes. West Tuality Habitat is the number one builder of entry-level homes in Western Washington County. And if you don't believe it, then prove it. Okay. All right. But also we've looked around. I think we are the only nonprofit home builder in our part of the county as well. There are some other nonprofit groups that do a lot of remodeling, but I don't think anybody else is doing home building, from the dirt up. So a lot of people ask, well, how does this work? If you don't give away homes, how do you work with families to get them into these homes? Well, I'll tell you a story. We'll start with a story first. Stories are great. And the names have been changed, of course, because these are people right here in our community. So Miguel and his 5-year-old son were living in a garden shed on a friend's property. He heard about our program at Habitat, applied, put in the sweat equity, and got into their own home. And it wasn't very long after that his son's reading scores just went up 50% after moving into their own home. And that's something that Habitat has done a lot of research on. Education outcomes greatly affected by stable and adequate housing. All right, so family selection, how does that work? How do people get into the programs? People apply to be accepted as a partner family, and acceptance is based basically on 3 categories of things. The family need, and 2, the ability to fulfill partner requirements, the ability to partner with Habitat, and that 3rd thing, ability to qualify and pay for an affordable mortgage. So they need to have some of those things, built into their life. Now, why would we call them partner families? Again, we think about this. This isn't a handout; it's a hand up. And Habitat strongly believes in creating an empowering moment for the family during this process that their home is being built and they're working on it. So we really want to empower the family that they're in partnership with us, we're in partnership with them. That's why that sweat equity is required. So the family is working on their home, or they're working on another partner's home that is being built at that time. During this process, they're assigned a mentor that works with them, walks them through the process, encourages them, makes sure that they're on track with all the parts of the program that they're required to do. They're given some financial education, preparing for that mortgage, which will include things like budgeting, not just how to build your home, but how to repair it and keep it in good repair afterwards, how to work on your credit, because we all know that's a part of applying for a mortgage, how to build and repair their credit as well as their home. So yeah, let's see, I did mention, preparing for home ownership. As we know, ownership is a little different ballgame than being a renter. So yeah, maintaining and repairing their own home. And they're also encouraged to think about just goals for the household, for their family, discover some meaningful goals to work on for them during this process. So we've had some families that have, finished their high school degree. They've gone to other degree completion programs, finished that college degree, take English as a second language classes. People have worked on starting businesses, even just simply working on their marriage, working on their relationships with their family. So it's a great process for them to kind of take their life back and really feel empowered that way. Here's another example, another great story. Love this story. Vera, a single senior woman, was at retirement age, but knew she couldn't afford rent on her meager Social Security benefits. So she was looking at the prospect of living in a camper for the rest of her life. But she applied to Habitat, was accepted, and is now living in a cozy, energy-efficient home with a mortgage scaled to her retirement income, where she can live out her golden years safely and comfortably. And so, these kind of stories just over and over and over again in our community, people's lives being really, really transformed by getting into that safe, secure, decent, affordable housing. Another part of Habitat's work in the community that a lot of people don't know about, I didn't know about it either, is Habitat's critical repair program. So here's a story. Carla owned her home, but wasn't able to live there anymore because she couldn't maneuver her new wheelchair safely within her own home. So she was living in a local care center for quite a number of months. So Habitat's team came to her home, assessed what needed to be changed, made those changes and remodeling for her capabilities, and then she was able to return and live in her own home again. So important, right? So important. Again, and those kind of stories repeat over and over again, especially for our older community members, our seniors. Issues of aging in place. That's a term that was kind of new to me, but this is a statistic that 72% of women over 70 live alone in our country. That's kind of sad. That kind of sounds sad in one way, but people want to stay in their own homes as long as they can, as long as they safely can. So that's a big part of what Habitat does, is help particularly our seniors stay in their homes longer safely. Most households that are headed by a person over 75 are homeowners. They're not renters. Most of them are homeowners in Oregon. And also in a recent AARP poll, 71% of people said their home has accessibility issues. There are things that need to be repaired, that there are things that aren't servicing them well. So, and of course, a majority of people who are homeowners, they view their home as their primary investment for the future. So especially for a person that, is in those retirement age in their 70s or 80s, they need that major life investment, their home, to, retain as much value as possible for as long as possible. But then it can be more difficult to maintain and keep up a home at those ages. So Habitat comes in to help those people. And again, we've seen, especially lately, a lot of people putting off those home repairs. And you'll see on the slide, 86% of homeowners waited to address an issue in their home because of financial reasons. And I think that's not a surprise, especially with the cost of having somebody do that work if you don't have the skills to do it, or the ability or the strength or the time to do it yourself. So you can see some of those stats on that slide. $3,100, the average estimated cost to address every unsolved issue in someone's home. Something I haven't mentioned, also a part of Habitat's work in the community, is the restore. So all the things are donated and resold in the store, and all those sales support Habitat's programs, the home building and the critical home repair. And also, Restore does a tremendous amount of recycling, which fits right into that mission. We're reselling, we're reusing, we're being creative with all these things that come into the store. Over 1 million pounds of goods processed every single year at your local Restore right here in Forest Grove. So 90% of those goods are cleaned, repaired, upcycled, keeping those things out of the waste stream. over 6,000 gallons of paint recycled, 5,000 light bulbs recycled. You're not supposed to just take those things and chuck them, right? But sometimes we do. But not anymore, because the restore will take those. 8 tons of cardboard recycled, 90,000 pounds of scrap metal recycled at the local restore. So we're excited that we get to do that kind of work and be that kind of resource in the community. So you might ask yourself, how can I donate my stuff to the restore? So this is something we've put together. Here's some questions to ask yourself honestly beforehand. Question: do you have gently used home goods or leftover building materials? I do. So questions to ask before donating. Is it in good condition and full working order? Does it have all its parts? No deep scratches or cracks? Is it free from stains and tears and pet odor? If it's an appliance, is it less than 10 years old? If not, just recycle that bad boy, right? Just reuse it, find something else to do with it, recycle it. But if so, bring those things to the restore. We're open Monday through Saturday. You can bring donations to the side of the building from 9 a.m. to 4:30. And of course, little asterisk there, all donations are subject to the approval of the restore staff. And we do pickups. You can call the restore number. It's right there on your screen right now. You can pick up items at your home or business. Sometimes there's a bit of a wait because a lot of people will be calling, especially during like moving season or something like that. But that is available. And that's kind of what we do. Let's see. I think I'm just about done. Oh yes, one more slide, of course. So you may ask yourself, I love these people. I love what they do. This is great work. How can I be a part of it? I'm glad you asked. So if you've got hours, you've got skills, time to donate, skills to donate. A lot of people, maybe they've spent their life, maybe not necessarily in the trades as a handyman or carpenter, but maybe you've spent most of your life repairing your own home, and maybe you don't want to do that 8 hours a day, but you can give 3 or 4 hours on a weekend. And we would love to have people with those kind of skills, or just time. You don't have to be a super skilled person, know how to do things. We'll just pair you up with the people that do. And so you can sign up at our website, westtualityhabitat.org, and there's a tab on there for volunteering. So we'd love to have you. We take groups, so a business group, a church group, a club, family reunion wants to do something for a few hours. We can arrange those things. You can donate your car to Habitat for Humanity. Come pick it up, even if it's not running. It just needs 4 tires with air in it. So anyway, and we'd love to have people come and shop the restore. Amazing finds in here. Stuff changes really just about daily. The things that come in and move out pretty quickly. So if you're a creative person, like to do little projects, come wander around, you'll find something that you just have to have. I'm sure of it, because I do all the time. So I think in conclusion, we're about there. I want to again say thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the program here. And again, we've got some time to answer some questions. So Bob, do we have anything like that?
We don't, but I want to remind everybody who's watching and listening, please pop your questions or comments into whatever box is available to do that on Facebook or YouTube. We will get to those as they come in. Steve, take a drink. You
I've got it here.
You did great work. I know it's a lot of talking, and I appreciate you picking up that heavy lift while I got to listen. So I, I was talking with Steve before the program, and I was saying that so much of what he talked about tonight, um, for someone who likes to think that I'm involved and care about and concerned with the state of housing in our area, so much of this information was brand new. And I think, um, Steve, what I really appreciated was how you brought all of these pieces together, how you pulled on those threads and tied them up so that um, it really, it's really important to emphasize that there's not one reason for a lack of housing. There are multiple reasons, and I really appreciated how you focused on those. And those things are interlocking, but they're also independent. So the
Sure.
complexity of this is really staggering. So thank you for doing that. You talk about um, cost burdening, and I think I just want to repeat the stat that you gave, where you said over half of Oregon households that rent spend over 30% of their gross income on a place to live, and
Right.
nearly 1 in 3 Oregon households with a mortgage are over that 30% line. That's a
Yeah.
staggering figure.
Yeah. I think most people are aware of just the price of living, of groceries, of gasoline. All these things go up. Um, and people have to start making those decisions about, okay, do I change? I mean, changing where you live is just a huge upheaval, a huge amount of effort. Can I find something less? Um, and it's a lot of times it's easier to just kind of go without some other thing. Change the quality of food that you're buying. Um, and people are making those decisions all the time.
Hmm. Hmm. And as you talked about later, folks who are in stable housing will often have to make a choice between paying their mortgage or fixing something that's been a chronic problem. And those
Sure.
things just mount up, right? Because
Right.
as a homeowner and as a homeowner yourself, there's never just one thing, right? It's always
No.
it's the it's the roof and then the gutters and then the windows, and it all just keeps adding
And then
up.
you got to repaint it again,
Yep.
and
Yep.
you can get away with some of those things for like a year. I mean, I've got a fence that needs to be resealed,
Hmm.
and I know if I don't do it, it's gonna deteriorate at a much faster rate, and then the repair will be so much higher because I'll have to just replace the whole thing.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but you kind of gauge those things. Okay, can we get one more year out of this, out of the furnace, out
Hmm.
of a leaky window? Yeah, those kind of they're tough decisions.
Yeah, and they often, I think, also carry with them unexpected and unanticipated costs, particularly related to health. And you talked
Right.
about, how getting into stable housing will affect educational outcomes. So the longer you
Hmm.
put off something like that, the that sort of deferred maintenance is just adding to those other related problems, right?
Right. Right. Um, yeah, we see those kinds of when housing is improved for people, their health very often improves. Um, education opportunities, education outcomes improve. A lot of things, people's stress level, feeling like, okay, I'm secure in my home. All the doors and the windows lock. If that's a need, at least that's something that is functional.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. The
yeah,
other piece that you talked about that I think is really fascinating, and we don't hear a lot about it, is the influence of those investors and investment groups who are coming
sure.
in and purchasing houses that go on the market. They snag them up immediately, take them off the market, and then often turn them into short-term rentals, which takes them out of the housing market, right? But it
Right.
creates another burden because the rents are often exorbitant. So those
Sure.
houses that could be some could be entry-level homes, they could be first houses, are made inaccessible. You said that was a new you had kind of discovered that, or that it was a kind of a new
Yeah.
insight for you. I mean, what does something like that mean for someone who is involved with affordable housing?
I think my impression was, well, that might be something that would certainly affect, maybe some of our coastal communities, like, because, you know, I love renting a house on the coast probably as much as anybody else does.
Mhm.
But thinking about, well, is that making it more difficult for people to just find affordable housing that live in, seaside or some of these other coastal communities? I'm like, wow, I didn't think about how that might affect things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't think of, maybe Forest Grove and Cornelius being a vacation destination. However, people are looking to rent homes. Where do they get a home to rent if they can't qualify for a mortgage? Well, where do those homes come from?
Mhm.
Um, so those are things that, for whatever reason are not on the market for sale. But
Right. And the interesting thing about that, I mean, from the what I know about that is, um, w- we're just not aware that that happens, right? There's not somebody doesn't just stick out a
sure,
sign saying that, this investment group has purchased this house. It all happens kind of below the surface. So houses will
right,
go on a market, but you never know you never know that they're
right.
available because they just
Sale
never.
pending, and
Yep,
that's it. Yeah,
and that's it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then, maybe a property management group, is contracted to take care of those kinds of things, and nobody ever thinks about who the actual owner is,
Hmm.
if they're local or not.
You when you were talking about home prices and the reasons for that incredible increase over the past 2 decades, I mean, again, just the four things you talk about, the fact that Oregon is growing so quickly, and that growing population has a direct impact on the demand for
Sure.
housing, and higher demand is higher prices. That's Econ 101, right? Um, the land costs and the availability of buildable land is another issue. Um,
Right.
and
And
I
I'm
think,
sure that's affected by, many more things than just the fact that we have an urban growth boundary.
right,
That's just kind of like one little thing that's like, oh, this maybe, depending upon who you are, maybe that's viewed as a good thing, a bad thing, a neutral kind of thing. But yeah, all those little pieces
right,
push things up.
right. And I think the other interesting thing about that is that it's not just the urban growth boundary that affects whether that particular piece of land is buildable. There are all kinds of other issues like grading and
Oh,
proximity
sure.
to a water source. I mean, all of those things can affect
Yeah.
the buildability, if that's a real
Right.
word, of
Right. All
and the
those
availability.
zoning requirements. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the third piece, again, and I think these are, we may be aware of these, but pulling them all together, how back just even a couple of years ago, locking in those low interest rates and not wanting to sell your house and not wanting to get yourself because those
Yeah.
interest rates have gone up. People are
Right.
just sitting on their houses. So,
Sure.
and then the last thing is inflation. Um, do you I'm interested in the housing crisis, and we go look back to 2008, 2009, and how that factors into the availability of houses, because it seems to me that housing that building went down, right, and we've
Hmm.
never really scaled back up to sort of uh, the amount of housing before the housing crisis.
Sure. And, that's not something that I have a lot of new information on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I don't, but yeah, I think um, and I think that's something that, depending upon whether, you were looking for a home or to move or change homes, the housing crisis affected different people certainly in very, very different ways.
Hmm.
Um, I think I bought my home kind of in between, some of those crisis points, and I was just glad that I was able to get into a home at the rate, for a mortgage that I was at the time.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know that there are a lot of people. I don't know. It seems to me that people move when they have to, um, a lot more than when it might be advantageous for some other reason.
Hmm.
Um, whether if you've got a job change, I mean, you've got to move. You got to sell your house. You just got to do it, whether the rates are good or bad or otherwise. Maybe you decide at that point whether you're going to try to find something to rent or lease or buy. But I don't know. It just seems like some of those things people feel like they have maybe not a lot of control over what they have to do
Hmm. Hmm.
for a variety of reasons.
So as we hear the conversation about housing and the sort of quick response is, well, if we have a housing shortage, if there are so few people without houses, the only solution is to just build more. You would say, thanks to your presentation, it's not that simple, right?
Yeah, it's a simple reply, but actually making it happen, yeah, much more
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. Um, so again, if you all have questions or comments, please share those with us. We'd love uh, to get those out and have Steve give him an opportunity to answer those as well. But in the meantime, I'm happy to just continue chatting. This is great. I'm really fascinated, and I said before we started that my understanding about um, the history of habitat
Hmm.
is fairly uninformed. I like to think I know enough about it, but your discussion of how the group came into being,
Hmm.
and really what that focus is on, as the sign behind you says, everyone, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really insightful, and also I think for folks who are participating in our summer reading program, it's really important to just reiterate that West Tuality Habitat is a community-based organization. The communities that they serve, Cornelius, Forest Grove, North Plains, Banks, Timber, Gales Creek, Gaston,
Hmm.
Cherry Grove, some of the smaller outlying areas. The work that you all are doing is in the community and is very community focused. And that's really the reason that we wanted to have this partnership, is that it's important to, um, I think it's important to lift up organizations that are doing work in the community, because we can't solve the region's problems, we can't solve the state's problems, we can't solve the problems of what's happening,
Yeah.
in the country. But organizations like West Tuality are really focusing on how to make those solutions happen in our region. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you
Yeah.
taking time to.
Yeah. And we know that habitat alone is certainly not going to solve the the housing crisis, but I'm a very strong believer in collaborating, that it takes all different kind of organizations and volunteers and people to really get things done well.
Mhm.
And you know gosh, I heard somebody mention a quote about, it's amazing how much things can get accomplished when you're not thinking about who's going to get credit. um,
Mhm.
I think I completely butchered that, but I heard that from somebody just recently,
I like that.
and yeah, I Habitat's a strong believer in linking arms with people. Um, we know that people need help with rent assistance, and that's not kind of our lane, so to speak, but we know that that's important and that's necessary, that's needed,
Mm-hmm.
and we're kind of focusing on a little bit of a different direction, but it takes all different kind of groups, all different kind of organizations to really make an impact and help people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to touch just briefly on some of the additional work that you provide for your partner families around financial literacy. I think a lot of people might not know that that's an important part of what you do in terms
Yeah.
of getting folks ready for home ownership. Can you talk a little more about what that looks like?
Yeah. And I'm not quite as involved in that part of the family services, but I mean, I know from experience, learning how to do a family budget, a household budget. I didn't have a lot of help with that, when I was married at like 21 years old. Oh my gosh. Uh, and I don't know that our public school programs are doing much of that anymore now either.
Mhm.
I think there were times that it was, but we don't want to just have people get in. We want people to get into a home and be able to stay there, and thrive there. And so yeah, so that's part of that mentorship, going over a household budget, and making sure that there's the good credit habits are built in beforehand. If
Mhm.
there's things that need to be kind of repaired or rehabilitated in their credit, how do you do that? What's important for that? Because qualifying for a mortgage is something that like we don't provide that. So they've got to get acceptance from another organization, and they're looking at the numbers.
Mhm.
um, you know we're hearing the stories and seeing the numbers, but they're just looking at the numbers, and it's an easy yes or no for them. Um, so yeah, helping those families realize what things, or habits they may or may not have had in the past that could sabotage some of those things, and then of course, yeah, getting into a home, and this is how you check the furnace filter.
Mhm.
Oh, I have to do that now. Yeah, that's something you got to do. Um, if you don't, it can be a little shocking. I've discovered. So yeah, just some of those things that people may not consider, um, and needs to be a part of their life.
Right. Yeah, for first time, uh, if you have no role model for home ownership, and if your experience has been renting, where
Yeah,
a lot of times those things are someone else takes care of that stuff. Now all of a
right,
sudden, that um, that relationship has shifted, and I
right.
really
There's no one to call.
there's no one to call exactly. And if those of us who own homes, sometimes we wish
Right,
there was
right.
somebody to call, but
Unless you've got a call with your Visa card in hand.
yeah, yeah. But that
Yeah,
I think that piece is a really important one and an important part of the message that we want to make sure that we're sharing with our community. That the construction of affordable and entry level houses is one part of
right.
a much deeper set of skills that go into taking responsibility to be in and own that
Yeah,
house.
yeah,
So that's great. And as you rightly point out, financial literacy is not something that many people have access to, and it's certainly not taught um, in schools. I don't believe. I think that's accurate. Um, One other thing I want to just touch on, and when you were talking about your critical repair program, I know that veterans are also a large part of
yes,
your
Yes.
service base. Can you talk about some of the work you've done with vets in our community?
I'm going through the mental file here. Um, 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 and again, I spend probably too much time at this desk. I'd like to get out into the community and see a little bit more of some of these things that happen. Um, I don't have a story to pull from
That's okay.
to
That's
share with you
okay.
at the moment, but
Well, and I think just the idea that as you talked about it, and in fact on your slide, you had a picture. I believe his name was Jerry, and he had
yes,
hashtag vet,
right,
and
right.
and he was
I did
standing
borrow
at the
that
ramp.
from, I think, one of the coastal affiliates.
Oh, okay.
Um, so got to share a little bit of their story with that one. But
Right, right. But that the idea that, you have someone, and I know on your website you cite some uh, pretty impressive statistics for the number of vets who are over the age of 55 who are living in homes that need repair, and as they get older,
sure.
and as they find themselves needing those repairs, Habitat really fills that important gap for them as well.
Yeah, and I think that's important for us to be able to, for Habitat to be able to come alongside maybe other veteran supporting organizations that maybe don't focus so much on the housing or the
Mhm.
repair, that we
Mhm.
can come alongside and say, hey, you've already got the relationships and the connections. You've got some trust built there in that, maybe that military culture that we don't share, but we can come alongside and kind of help get some things done that there might not be that same level of expertise in that particular veterans group, but yeah, we just want to again collaborate and be there, and if we can add some expertise, then absolutely, or
Right, right.
volunteers or whatever's needed.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important to remind people that the services to the men and women who've served the country, it's that those often are not they're not things that we think of, right? I mean, we acknowledge someone's service, but we don't often realize that they are also recipients of programs that help make their lives better and help improve the quality of their
Hmm.
lives too. And organizations that are really involved in helping to do that, I think, particularly in the community, or it's always worth acknowledging that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Steve, I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate you taking this evening. You are at work. We found out you're at work, and I want to thank you again for agreeing to share your perspective on the state of affordable housing in Western Washington County, and also um, providing that background on what Habitat does, the history, and also how they help folks in the community line up with affordable entry level housing. Is there anything that you would like to say just in conclusion that you didn't get a chance to talk about, or any final remarks before we close out for the evening?
Wow. I think I got through my notes pretty well
You
there,
did great.
but
Yeah, you did great.
um, no, I mean, for me personally, have such a strong desire to see our entire community, um, and these five primary communities in Western Washington County, to see our communities really thrive and be raised up, and that's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, and that's just been a growing desire to see our community thrive.
Hmm.
And the work of Habitat, along with many other organizations, are working towards that. And I think I would just want to encourage people to, um, it doesn't take, you know, a full-time job at an organization or a nonprofit to make a difference in our community. I would just really encourage people, if you could volunteer, 4 hours on a Saturday once a month, that's going to start adding up. And love to see just volunteerism in general grow in our community. And if everybody can just do just a little bit, um, then a lot can be accomplished. Really,
Great.
a lot of lives can be transformed.
That's great. I love that. I want to just remind folks who are watching, and if you want to participate and you're in that service area, the Forest Grove, Cornelius, North Plains, Gaston, Gales Creek area, and you want to participate in the library's Read for a Cause program, I put a link for signing up in the chat box. In a year from now, if somebody's watching this, that link is not going to work. So we are doing that through August 15th. And just a reminder that every hour adults in our community, so those areas as well as Forest Grove, read, there is a matching dollar amount that will make its way to West Tuality Habitat for Humanity. And there's been just tremendous participation and engagement in the community so far, and we want to keep that going. So I can say from my perspective, it's been great starting this relationship and starting this partnership with West Tuality, and we're just so pleased at the response we've received so far. So thank you for the work you do, and thank you for taking time out tonight to talk a little bit more about
Well,
that.
thank you for the invitation. This was fun. It was good.
Good, good. Well, everybody, we'll say good night for now. Steve, we'll chat a little bit once we're offline. But again, thanks, Steve, for being here tonight. And everybody, if we don't see you at the library, we'll see you online. And take care, keep reading, and have a great evening.